Coffee Break Spanish, program 52.
Buenos dias, how you do? We got something for you. A bit of Spanish you can try. It's not hard, now don't you cry. Más cerveza, por favor. Un cafecito, I want more. No haggis here, I hope that's fine. Just a bit of Espanol online. Espanol, you're in control. Just be resilient. One in Spanish is dead brilliant. Just be prepared. Mark and Kara will take you there. Now you're on a roll. It's Coffee Break Español.
Hola otra vez.
Me llamo Cara.
Y yo soy Mark.
And you're listening to Coffee Break Spanish.
The podcast which teaches you the Spanish language, ideally accompanied by a latte, or a cup of tea, or a glass of wine, or whatever you want.
So, Mark, ¿qué vamos a hacer hoy?
Oh, you've been swatting up.
Yep.
Well, today we're getting ready to move on with our verbs. So far, we've covered lots of present tenses with both regular and irregular verbs. And there are a few things that we need to do to make sure that we're 100% confident with these verbs before we move on.
So we're moving on this lesson?
No, but in lesson 53, we're going to be going back in time and talking, for the first time, about the past.
Okay, but we're just sticking with the here and now for today?
Yep, today we're talking about the present tense. Let's get on with the show. ¿Estás lista, Cara?
Sí, estoy lista para aprender español con Coffee Break Spanish.
Coffee Break Español.
Okay, so as I explained there, we're really taking this opportunity to go through all the present tense things that we've already learned. All the radical changing verbs, the reflexive verbs, the regular verbs, and the irregular verbs that we've already covered so far. And we're going to begin with something very, very easy indeed, and that is regular AR verbs in the present tense. Let's take, for example, hablar. Can we go through hablar together? What does hablar mean?
To speak.
To speak, of course. So we're going to go through hablar together in its conjugation, starting with I speak.
Hablo.
Hablo. You speak.
Hablas.
Hablas. He, she, it, or you polite speaks.
Habla.
Habla. And we speak.
Hablamos.
Hablamos. And you, plural, informal, speak.
Habláis.
Habláis. And they speak, or you, polite, plural, speak.
Hablan.
Hablan. Muy bien. Now, these 6 parts of the verb are very important because we're going to use these 6 parts in all the verbs that we're going to be learning in future lessons, and indeed in all the verbs that we've already learned. So, going through the full conjugation of hablar, you would say hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan.
Hablo. Hablas. Habla. Hablamos. Habláis. Hablan.
Muy bien. Now, that's AR verbs in the present tense. As we've been learning other verbs, we have come across a few verbs, like comer and vivir, that don't end in AR. And we didn't really spend any time on these in previous lessons. So today we're going to learn the proper full conjugations of ER verbs and IR verbs. At the time, I didn't really want to confuse things, but I think you're ready for this now. So let's look at ER verbs to begin with. And we'll take the example of comer, meaning?
To eat.
Yeah, to eat. So let's conjugate comer in its 6 forms. To say I eat, you say como.
Como.
You eat is comes.
Comes.
And he, she, it, or you polite eats is come.
Come.
Okay, so let's think about these 3 forms. Como, comes, come.
Como. Comes. Come.
And compare them to the infinitive comer. Okay, so there's an E in the infinitive, comer. And compare that to hablar with an ar in the infinitive, an A in the infinitive, giving hablo, hablas, habla. It's really the same pattern. The only thing that changes is the vowel. So, como, hablo, comes, hablas, come, habla. Okay, let's just go back to comer. Como, comes, come.
Como, comes, come.
Any guesses as to what we eat would be?
Comemos.
Muy bien. Comemos. And then you eat.
Coméis.
Coméis. That's the plural informal form. And they eat.
Comen.
Exacto. So we've got como, comes, come. Comemos, coméis, comen.
Como, comes, come. Comemos, coméis, comen.
Muy bien. Now, as you can see, you know this rhythm so well of AR verbs that you can really transpose that into ER verbs and just change that one vowel. And you know the rhythm so well that it's absolutely easy to form the ER verbs and indeed the IR verbs when we got onto them. Let's take a couple more examples of ER verbs now. We'll begin with vender.
Vender.
Now, vender means to sell. Vender.
Vender.
How would you say then? I sell.
Vendo.
Vendo. Mm-hmm. And you sell?
Vendes.
Vendes. And he, she, or it sells?
Vende.
Vende. Now, if you've ever been in a Spanish-speaking country, you may have seen a sign on, for example, a house saying se vende. Se vende. Now, se vende literally means sells itself. It's like a reflexive verb, se vende. And it means esta casa se vende. This house sells itself. But of course, really, in other words, that means that the house is for sale. Se vende. And that's a sign that you quite often see on houses or flats in Spanish-speaking countries. Let's move on. We've got we sell, vendemos.
Vendemos.
Vendemos. You sell, in the plural, informal, vendéis.
Vendéis.
And they sell, venden.
Venden.
Or indeed, you, formal, plural, sell, venden.
Venden.
Now, just as we had se vende, when we're talking about a house, se vende esta casa, you might also see se venden.
Se venden.
For example, maybe an advert in a newspaper, se venden apartamentos.
Se venden apartamentos.
Okay, so flats or apartments are being sold. Se venden apartamentos. Literally, flats or apartments sell themselves. Se venden apartamentos. Okay, let's look at one other ER verb, and we'll look at aprender, a word that we've used 100 times. Aprender means
To learn.
to learn, and now you're going to be able to conjugate to learn. Aprender. I learn is
Aprendo.
aprendo. You learn.
Aprendes.
He, she, it learns.
Aprende.
We learn.
Aprendemos.
You learn.
Aprendéis.
They learn.
Aprenden.
Muy bien. Aprendo, aprendes, aprende. Aprendemos, aprendéis, aprenden.
Aprendo, aprendes, aprende, aprendemos, aprendéis, aprenden.
Muy bien. So there you have the conjugations of ER verbs. Very straightforward, very similar to AR verbs, and just the key vowel changing. So the A of AR verbs changes to E with ER verbs. Let's now look at another conjugation. There only are 3 conjugations in Spanish, you'll be pleased to know, and the third conjugation is for IR verbs. Now, an example here would be vivir.
Vivir.
Now, Cara, can you remember what vivir means?
To live.
To live, that's right. Now, we had vivir in its conjugated forms way back, probably in lesson 3 or 4, when we were learning to say, I live in whatever. So, let's go through now the conjugation of vivir. Can you remember how to say I live?
Vivo.
Vivo. Okay, vivo. You live?
Vives.
Yeah, vives. Okay, and he, she, or it lives?
Vive.
Yeah, so let's think about this. We've got vivo, vives, vive. Now, given that we're talking about vivir, and it's an IR verb, you might think, well, if we're following the rules with the AR and the ER, we would keep that vowel and use something like VV, but that doesn't quite work here. It forms very similar endings in these first three parts to ER verbs. In fact, they're identical. So, vivo, vives, vive.
Vivo. Vives. Vive.
Okay, but when it comes to the we form, then you are going to use the I of the infinitive here. So you would say, we live, vivimos.
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 And the you plural form in Spain is vivís.
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 And the they form goes back to the E. So it's viven.
Viven.
Let's run through the whole conjugation. Vivo, vives, vive.
Vivo. Vives. Vive.
Vivimos, vivís, viven.
Vivimos. Vivís. Viven.
Muy bien. In actual fact, it's quite tricky to say these, particularly the vivís form, because there's almost a tendency to stress that vivís like that with the other habláis and vendéis, but it's just vivís.
Vivís.
Okay, and of course, if you're in Latin America, then you don't really need to worry about this vivís form, but it's always useful to recognize it, because if you're reading any Spanish and the Spanish is coming from Spain, then it's very likely that you would see it. So let's look at some alternative IR verbs. We've done vivir. Let's look at abrir. Abrir means to open. You've already heard the word abierto. Abierto, meaning...
Open.
Yeah,
Like a
a shop
restaurant?
or something like that, yeah. So abrir is to open. How would you say, I open?
Abrio. Abro. Even.
Just abro.
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 So abro la ventana.
Abro la ventana.
La ventana is the window. Abro la ventana.
Abro la ventana.
How would you say, you open?
Abres.
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 And he, she, or it opens?
Abre.
Abre. Now, what about we open?
Abrimos.
Muy bien. Abrimos.
Abrimos.
And you, plural, open?
Abris.
What's your stresses?
Abris.
Abris. That's it. Abris.
Abris.
And they open?
Abren.
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 Muy bien. Abro, abres, abre, abrimos, abrís, abren.
Abro. Abres. Abre. Abrimos. Abrís. Abren.
Perfecto. Let's try one more and we'll take another very common word, escribir.
Escribir.
Escribir means to write. Escribir.
Escribir.
So I write,
Escribo.
you write,
Escribes.
he, she, or it writes,
Escribe.
we write,
Escribimos.
you write,
Escribís.
they write.
Escriben.
Muy bien. Escribo, escribes, escribe, escribimos, escribís, escriben.
Escribo. Escribes. Escribe. Escribimos. Escribís. Escriben.
Muy bien. Now, I hope you're all remembering to do the actions that we learned for the different parts of the verb when we were reciting verbs for the first time back in Unit 5. Okay, that's about as much as you need to know about regular AR, IR and ER verbs in Spanish. But before we finish this podcast, we're just going to run through a couple of other things that we learned when we were looking at the present tense. The first of these is looking at radical changing verbs. And in fact, a couple of the radical changing verbs that we learned were ER and IR verbs. Think of, for example, poder. Do you remember what poder means?
To be able to.
Yeah. So our endings were puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, podéis, pueden. So in addition to the radical change there, when we were talking about puedo as opposed to podo or anything like that, poder in the infinitive, but puedo in the conjugated version, we had the endings o, es, e, hemos, eis, en. Puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, podéis, pueden.
Puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, podéis, pueden.
Muy bien. Now, the radical changing verbs that we looked at in the main lessons were verbs that changed o in the infinitive to ue, like poder, and also verbs that changed e in the infinitive to, what was that, Cara?
I-e.
Ie. Can you give me an example?
Pensar, to think. We said pienso.
Exactly. Can you conjugate the whole of pensar?
Pienso, piensas, piensa, pensamos, pensáis, piensan. Piensan.
Piensan. Yeah, that's right. Pienso, piensas, piensa, pensamos, pensáis, piensan. So the IE comes in the first, second, third, and the sixth part, and then the E is used, the E of the infinitive is used in the fourth and fifth parts. Pensamos, pensáis. Let's think for a moment about reflexive verbs. And reflexive verbs can be AR verbs, they can be ER verbs, IR verbs, radical changing verbs, or indeed irregular verbs. The difference with these ones is, of course, that they need a reflexive pronoun. Now, Cara, can we run through our reflexive pronouns, please? And we'll do this by revising a few of the reflexive verbs we covered. First of all, let's look at levantarse. Levantarse means?
To get up?
Yeah, to get up in the morning. So, I get up would be?
Me levanto.
Me levanto. Muy bien. Me levanto. It's kind of I get myself out of bed and so on. And what about lavarse, meaning?
To wash yourself?
To wash yourself. So you could say, you wash yourself.
Te lavas?
Te lavas. Te lavas.
Te lavas.
Okay, so te being the reflexive pronoun for you, singular, informal form. Now, what about he or she calls herself or himself?
Se llama?
Se llama. So, me, te, se. Now, what about we shower ourselves?
Nos duchamos?
Nos duchamos, yeah. The reflexive pronoun is nos. Nos duchamos.
Nos duchamos.
And you all, in the informal plural form, you all put your makeup on, from maquillarse.
Os maquilláis.
Muy bien. Os maquilláis. Okay. And finally, what about they all go to sleep? They fall asleep.
Se duermen?
Se duermen. Now note that duermen, dormirse, is a radical changing reflexive verb. Me duermo.
Me duermo.
So I fall asleep. Notice the difference between duermo. Duermo is I sleep, but me duermo is I kind of put myself to sleep. I fall asleep. Me duermo.
Me duermo.
Te duermes.
Te duermes.
So you fall asleep. Se duerme.
Se duerme.
Se duerme, he or she falls asleep. And then it goes on. Nos dormimos. Os dormís. Se duermen.
Coffee break español.
Bueno, ¿qué tal hoy?
Hopefully, now you know all you need to know about Spanish verbs in the present tense.
Hopefully.
Now, if you do have any further questions, don't forget that you can discuss today's lesson either on the Radiolingua forum or indeed on the blog for today's lesson.
And don't forget too that you can post your comments and reviews of Coffee Break Spanish on iTunes or on the Podcast Alley website. There are links on the Coffee Break Spanish website at www.coffeebreakspanish.com.
Another thing we'd like to remind you of is that we have a regular monthly newsletter which provides all the information you need to know about the Radiolingua network.
If you go to www.radiolingua.com/mailing list, you'll be able to sign up to subscribe for our newsletter.
And each newsletter includes a special discount code, which you can use to get reduced prices in our store, where you can purchase season passes for our podcast series.
Algo más, Mark?
Actually, yes, I'd just like to mention to any of our listeners who are learning German that we are going to be launching a new German language podcast very soon. A Flavour of German brings some spice to your German language and teaches you how to use real German.
And I hear that you're changing roles in A Flavour of German, Mark.
Yes, in this new podcast, I'll be taking the role of the student with our German colleague Julia, who'll be helping me to improve my Deutsch.
Sehr gut. Muy bien.
Okay, that's it for this week.
We'll be back again next week with more Coffee Break Spanish.
In the meantime, gracias por haber descargado este podcast.
Hasta la semana que viene.
Adiós.
Coffee Break Español.
This podcast was brought to you by the Radiolingua Network. Find out more at www.radiolingua.com.